check my watch. 10:25 p.m. My eyes burned from an 8-hour day shift, and now I was nearing the end of my second job of the day. I work 4 nights a week delivering pizza. Living alone, paying child support for my daughter, it all added up. But that's life, sink or swim, though most days I was just treading water. Lately though, something been gnawing at me. Life didn't feel like life anymore. It felt like something other people did while I was just stuck on autopilot, working and sleeping, inhaling bad food and going through the same routine. Shit, shower, shave, repeat. But anyway, back to the story. I lit my last cigarette and took a long drag. The smoke curling up into the night air. It's a dirty habit, I know, but a guy's gotta have at least one vice. Ain't that the rule? Flicking the cigarette butt into the gutter, I pushed through the glass door of Frank's Pizza Palace. The place smelled like melted cheese and oregano. Frank, the owner, was behind the counter, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to keep them warm. "Any more orders?" I asked. "Just one." His voice was oddly flat. "It's been a slow night. This one's a bit out there, 10-15 minute drive, but it'll be the last run for you." "Works for me," I replied. I leaned against the counter, sneaking a look at Charlie, the new gal. She was something else. A couple of years younger than me, dark hair pulled back into a ponytail, eyes sharp enough to cook glass. She moved like she was in on a joke the rest of us hadn't figured out yet. I caught her watching me a few times, but I didn't really know what to make of her. But she looked good, and I liked the challenge. Although that didn't explain why I'd spent the last few months sleeping with half the tramps in Patterson. But hey, a man has needs. Frank slid the bag onto the counter, but when I went to reach for it, he held on to it. I frowned. "Frank, I kinda need that bag if you want me to make the delivery." He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, holding on to the other side of the bag, staring right past me. When he finally spoke, his voice was slow, careful. "It's just," he hesitated, "the call. It was a bit off." "Off?" I asked. "Yeah, I can't put my finger on it. The voice just didn't sound right." I smirked. "Foreign? The guy no speak of the English?" I asked. Frank shook his head. "Nah, not that. Just something about it." I sighed. "Frank, I gotta go, man. I want to get back and go home." That seemed to snap him out of his trance. He let go of the bag, but as I turned to leave, he spoke again. "You be careful out there, okay?" That was new. Frank was not the sentimental type. I turned back and found him watching me. His usual easygoing expression was pulled tight with something I didn't quite like. "Frank, it's one of those big houses on Greenside Hill. I've delivered pizzas to the worst places in town. I'm still here. People like me. What can I say?" Frank gave a half smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, I guess you're right. Tell you what, when you get back, you can take a special home, on the house. I'll throw in a cold drink too." "That's mighty generous of you, boss," I said. I then pulled open the door and left, still feeling the weight of his stare on my back. Greenside Hill wasn't far. It was another world compared to where we lived. Big houses spread out, tucked behind thick trees. It was like a forest out there. It was the place in Patterson everyone dreamed of escaping to. If you moved there, you made it. I turned off the main road and onto a narrow track, my headlights cutting through the dark. A wooden sign stood at the turnoff, 1804 painted in black, an arrow pointing up the slope. The rain had been relentless all week, and the ground was soft. My tires skidded as I drove slowly up the path. Something about the place felt wrong. I rolled down my window. The air was heavy, damp. No streetlights, no porch lights ahead, just trees leaning in close. I glanced at the bag on the seat beside me. Something about this run just didn't feel right. Frank's voice echoed in my head. The call was off. I swallowed, tightened my grip on the wheel, and kept driving. What was the worst that could happen? Trust the last delivery of the night to be the trickiest. But hey, I'd soon be home, laid out on my bed, TV on, shoveling down a Frank special while watching some cheesy action flick that my ex-wife would have rolled her eyes at. Being single had its perks. My car groaned as it climbed the last stretch of the hill. The tires skidded left and right, but I kept it steady. The driveway had turned to sludge from the rain, and I wasn't about to get stuck out there. A few minutes later, the house came into view. It sat below me, at the bottom of a flight of stairs, my headlights catching the porch in its glare. The place wasn't exactly falling apart, but it had the forgotten look. Paint peeling, weeds strangling the front steps, a sag in the roof that hadn't been there long enough to be dangerous, but long enough to tell me that nobody gave a shit. I figured an old person lived there. That would explain the weird voice that Frank had been so rattled about. Senility, loneliness, maybe even a bad case of smoker's throat. I delivered to plenty of elderly folks before. Hey, they were usually the best tippers. I grabbed the bag, stepped out, and started down the stairs, my sneakers squelching in the mud. The only sound was my breathing and the occasional sucking noise as my foot stuck to the ground and I had to pull it out. I locked my knees to keep from going ass over elbow. I concentrated on each step. By the time I reached the porch, I was hoping for one of those motion sensor lights to kick in. No such luck. The house loomed in the dark, hunched and silent. The only life was a faint glow from behind a curtain, which I assumed was the TV. I reached for the doorbell. It was stiff as hell. I pressed hard, and it let out a faint, sickly buzz. It was like an old fly trapped in a lampshade. Didn't seem like it was working, so I knocked. Usually by this point, you hear something. A voice calling out, footsteps hurrying down a hall, a dog going ballistic, but there was nothing. I waited. I knocked again. Still nothing. I was about to give up when I finally heard it. A voice. It was low and muffled. Words I couldn't quite make out. I knocked again. A little softer this time. Hello? Silence. Then another murmur. Still too muffled to understand. Hey, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Still trying to be polite, but wanting to get the hell out of there. I got your pizza here. Almost the end of my shift, so if I can drop this and get back to my own dinner, I'll be a happy man. This time, I heard it. Come in. I froze. I rarely went inside when delivering. It wasn't a done thing. The last time I had, it was an elderly lady who couldn't find her purse. I'd stood in her living room while her fat 2-year-old grandson toddled around just bumping into everything. That was the last time, and the only time. I didn't want to be near that house a minute longer. I'm not sure I'm meant to be coming inside, I said. Would be easier if you just came and grabbed it, or I can leave it here. I hesitated, looking around. The woods meant animals, and if I left a fresh hot pizza out on the porch, raccoons and foxes would be over it in minutes. And I'd be getting an angry call from Frank to come back with a replacement. I sighed. I grabbed the door handle and I turned it. The door swung open with a long, aching creak, and then the smell hit me. I gagged, putting my arm over my mouth and nose. Jesus Christ, it was thick, rotten, the kind of stench that clings to the back of your throat and makes your stomach flip before your brain can even process it. I stepped inside, swallowing hard. The living room was old-fashioned but neat. 2 sofas, TV turned off, no sign of anyone. I tightened my grip on the pizza bag. Where'd you want this? I called out, my patience wearing thin. It's been a long day, pal. Nothing. Just that smell, thick as fog, pressing in around me. Here, said a muffled voice. As I heard it, I thought of Frank's face, that bemused look he'd had when handing me the pizza bag. And right then in that moment, I understood why. Where's here? My voice came out steadier than it felt. Listen, man or lady, I really need to get back, so if we could just... Here, please. Something about those 2 words made my skin crawl. I took a slow breath and stepped forward. A doorway leading into a narrow, dark hallway. No lights, no movement, just a dim glow at the other end. I started toward it. Then I saw her. I screamed. High-pitched, roar like something torn straight out of a nightmare. At the end of the hallway stood a figure with a long black dress. That was not the worst part. The worst part is that figure stood about 8 feet tall. And the face. Jesus Christ, the face. It was stretched, bloated like something swollen with gas. The features exaggerated like it was looking in a funhouse mirror. The eyes were empty voids, black pits set too deep, and yet somehow, impossibly, the face glowed in the dark as if it was lit from within. Then I saw the thing beside her. Tall, thin, standing half in shadow, one long spidery hand shoved into the back of her skull, working the tall female figure like it was operating a ventriloquist's dummy. Her face, swollen, luminous, twisted into a grotesque smile, and then it spoke. The voice, if you could call it that, was something broken, something wrong. The words came out twisted, inhuman. I dropped the fucking pizza. I tore through the house, through the living room, past the dark TV screen that now seemed way too reflective. Any second I expected to see that glowing face flicker in the view behind me. I hit the door running, half expecting it to be locked, because isn't that always the way it goes in the horror movies? But it swung open. I flew out onto the porch, down the steps and straight into the mud. My feet slipped from under me and suddenly I was looking up at the stars. My back slammed into the ground, my head cracking against the bottom step. For a few seconds I lay there, floating. My limbs felt distant, numb, almost calm. Then I heard it. The door creaked open, I turned my head, and she was gliding out toward me. The puppet master followed, moving in that slow, patient way predators move when they know they've got their prey. The old woman's lips moved, but the voice that came out was not hers. I don't know what she said. I don't want to know what she said. But I knew, without a doubt, that whatever she'd been in life was now gone. She was some kind of weird toy. And I just knew that if I didn't get my ass out of there, I'd be next. Adrenaline kicked in, my body jerked into motion, and I scrambled to my feet, head swimming, my legs buckling beneath me. The impact had rattled me something bad, and I was seeing double, but the terror pushed me onward. From behind came a sound that did not belong to this world. I didn't look back. I ran. The stairs were slick, treacherous underfoot, but I powered up them, slipping, swearing, somehow managing to keep on moving. Tunnel vision locked onto my car. I was almost there, so close, when I saw it. Someone was sitting in my driver's seat, and she was smiling at me. I stopped dead. It was her, the old lady, but how? How the fuck was she already in my car? I stood in the rain, panting and staring. Then, in my peripheral vision, something moved. Something low, spider-like, creeping up toward me on the muddy bank. I ran past the car, my skin crawling with the thought of something reaching out for me, long fingers wrapping around my ankle. I ran until my lungs burned, and until my shoes hit the blessed safety of tarmac. I walked down the road and finally I saw a cab rolling toward me. I threw myself inside. Frank Castelli's pizza place, I gasped. Frank was pissed. Where the hell you been? He barked as I staggered inside. I've been waiting to close up. I stared at him. My brain was sludge. The house, I managed. Frank's irritation flickered into something else. Concern. What about it? I tried to explain. I really did, but the words would not come out. Frank studied me for a moment. I fucking knew there was something off about that call. We went and sat in the back room, and I told him everything. And if I'd been worried he wouldn't believe me, I needn't have been. He took every word at face value. We agreed not to call the cops, because let's face it, what the hell were we gonna say? Yeah, officer, I was attacked by an 8-foot ventriloquist doll. Please investigate. But I needed my phone back and my car, so we made a plan. Frank picked me up the next morning. Daylight made the hill and the drive to the house look almost normal. The woods were quiet. My car sat where I left it, but the keys and the phone were gone. Frank lifted his jacket slightly, revealing a gun tucked into his waistband. Shall we go knock the door? He asked. I hesitated. My gut screamed no. But before I could answer, a voice made us both jump. I think these are yours, young man. We spun around. A small, frail woman stood beside my car, holding out my keys and my phone in a trembling hand. Where the hell had she come from? I was here last night, I said dumbly. She smiled. Oh, I know. I saw you. That pizza was delicious, by the way. My blood ran cold. I fell, I said. I hit my head. Ah, yes, she sighed. Gets awfully slippy out here in the rain, doesn't it? Her smile widened, and then I saw it. Her face did not quite fit. It was smaller now, almost normal, but something about it was off, like a mask, stretched too tight over a frame it wasn't made for. I saw you, I whispered. You were taller. Your face was... She cut me off with a chuckle. Oh, we were just having some fun, son. Didn't mean to scare you that bad. I'm sorry. Then Frank's hand landed on my shoulder. I think we're done here, he muttered. I turned and got into my car, and as I drove away, I thought I kept seeing something amongst the trees. It was tall, dark, and it was watching me. All that happened on Greenside Hill about a month ago. Yesterday, I was walking to my apartment from the store when I saw two of the kids who lived in my block playing in the hall. Then I noticed they were playing with these shiny gold coins, as if they were counting them. They look expensive, I said. Nippy, the older of the two, looked up at me. The new guy gave them to us. I frowned. Oh yeah? I've been so busy lately I don't know what's going on around here. What's he like? Nippy shrugged. He's cool, kinda old. Wears a hat. A hat, I said. Very distinguished. And he just, gave you those coins? Yeah, Nippy said. He seemed like a nice guy. Then he hesitated. But it's just that... I raised an eyebrow. Just that what? He glanced at the younger kid, Chase, like maybe he shouldn't say nothing. Chase, though, he did not have the same filter. It was just his face, he said. Something crept up my spine at those words. His face, I asked? What was up with it? Yeah, it was kind of odd. Odd how? I asked. Chase hesitated. He thought about it, and then he finally said, it was like the skin didn't quite fit properly.